Going on, Falcon fan? This your boy Ricondo coming back at you with another video. Today we're gonna recap the second Falcon second preseason game. Um, that fifth three-man roster is coming into shape. Um, and then we're gonna talk about the depth chart a little bit more. So, guys, with that being said, if you have not already, go ahead and please subscribe to the channel. Please hit that notification bell so you not drop another video. Please hit the little like button so I know you guys are here to talk about. Then please share my video throughout YouTube universe so more people can come here to talk about. That's right, these Atlanta Falcons. So, guys, like I said, recap of game two. Um, and let's start with this saying that the first half is probably was unforgettable, right? We were just going to go ahead and forget about the first half. Well, that's unforgettable. It was forgettable first half, and just too many penalties. It was not good at all, especially from an offensive standpoint. Um, too many penalties, and that's one thing that we cannot have. A lot of times when the Falcons start to get momentum on drives and things, penalties happen, and that kind of happened a lot of times, or 3 times for the Atlanta Falcons during the season last year. So they got to eliminate the penalties, especially the offensive line. Um, Big plays called back. Dylan Drummond had a hold on the play. We had too many 4 starts from our tackles, our left and right tackles, Elijah Wilkinson and Jack Nelson. Just too many penalties there, and it was just really sloppy game from the Atlanta Falcons in the first half. So that's something that we cannot have. We can't have the sloppiness happening and things like that. So um, that's that's one of the things that really hurt us. Now, one good thing was in the second half. I don't know what I don't know what Raheem Morris told the team during halftime, but they came out and they actually had a way better second half. Um, the things that we wanted to see start happening. One of the main things that we wanted to see in this game was the run game look better than it did in the first preseason game, right? Because some of those offensive linemen, you never know if we have an injury to our starting five. Some of those guys got to fill in roles. So you like the way that they responded in the second half, getting the running game going. Um, Javon Gwynn is a guy that I think looked pretty good. Um, you know, they had him playing. He's played center, he's played guard as well. So I liked what Javon Gwynn was able to bring to the table from a run game standpoint, for an offensive line. But let's be honest, Jack Nelson. Um, if you put first preseason game, second preseason game, film together, he's looking like he might not make the squad. Now he was a 7th round overall pick, developmental guy, and he might be put on the practice squad. But at this point in time, I don't think he's going to make the 53-man roster. Just been very, very inconsistent. You know, those penalties is killing us, and he's been a culprit of penalties on first first preseason game and second preseason game. So that's not good. Elijah Wilkinson, I don't know what his mindset is. I mean, this guy been in the league forever, and the penalties that he got was you can't there's no excuse for those. You cannot have those things. So both of those guys just star drives for us, but they did play better in the second half. Let's they had like 7 penalties in the first half and ended up like only 3 in the second half. So that's just huge. But one of the main things we want to see from offensive standpoint is the running game. I think the running game actually good. Nathan Carter looked really well. Looking at that third running back spot, Carlos Washington been out injured. A guy like Nathan Carter, he showed his speed, that 4.4 speed that he has. And if they can find a way to do the numbers right and have a third running back on this team, that where you might see somebody like Nathan Carter instead of Carlos Washington. So you like to see that, but man, if you're injured, if you can't play, especially in the back end of roster trying to make depth charts, you're going to hurt yourself, right? And that's just the nature of the beast. So Carlos Washington being out is a bad thing, right? But it helps opportunity for other guys, and Nathan Carter is taking the opportunity. So you got love to see that. Same thing to be said by David Seals and Chris Blair. Both of those guys also, taking the best of the opportunities that they had. When you start looking at some of these guys and the snaps they get and things like that. It can tell when I talk about 53-man roster, but that's what I'm talking about. You have to start looking at guys make name for themselves. The opportunities that you get, especially when guys are down in these preseason games, are so valuable, especially for Atlanta Falcon team who does not play their starters. So you're going to get a lot of reps. You're going to be able to put a lot of film out there on tape to other teams, not just Atlanta Falcons, but other teams can see you as well. So that's your opportunity that you have to have. And Jack Nelson having mistakes. Like I said, Elijah Wilkinson is no excuse for his penalties and stuff like that. But these guys made plays, right? You look at what we've seen from David Steels, we've seen from Chris Blair. Easton Stick, I thought took a step back, big step back from his performance that he had in the first preseason game. He was really, really good in the first preseason games. I mean, quarterback rating was out the roof. He made all his, accurate throws. He looked at poise in the pocket. He looked so much different than he looked in the second preseason game. And it couldn't be any worse than what he played, right? He did have a touchdown pass to Chris Blair, but other than that, I thought he took a step back, right? So that's what we're talking about. When you have the opportunities, you got to be consistent, right? You can't just have one good game and then, the next game have a terrible one. It just don't work. It's just not going to be good. It's not going to be conducive for any player that's on the fringe. They're trying to make the team. Is not going to help for them guys. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. Jalen Walker did not play, so we did not get to see him out there. He pulled a groin or something. Raheem said, but he should be back next week. So I guess it wasn't serious, but they wanted to hold him out, for that. But James Pierce played again. The guy just continued to get pressures on the quarterback. You can see that he really know how to set the edge. He know how to use his speed to power to disrupt plays in the backfield. He caused, in my opinion, a pick that the interception by Nathan Brooks, who has also, solidified, in my opinion, solidified himself on the 50-man roster, being that depth for the cornerback position. That's Nathan Brooks. But we love the penetration that we getting to see from James Pierce Jr. Also, Brandon Dorless, I thought he had another solid day as well. We get these guys got to really, stay in their lanes, because when they don't stay in their lanes, on one play, James Pierce got pressure, but Lakel London, like, he got washed inside, and the quarterback was able to slip out the back. So, got to be able to stay in your lanes, right? That's why you rush as a unit. You'll be able to make some good plays, because the penetration is there, the pressures are getting there, but guys got to make plays. D'Angelo Malone looked great. He missed a sack, but he was able to get around the corner. So you love to see the pressure that you get for D'Angelo Malone. Braylon Trice is another guy that came back. He looked good as well. His snaps that he had, you can see him being able to set the edge, being able to make plays, in the backfield as well. So the guys that we expect to play well, in those spots, are doing what they're doing. They're taking advantage of the opportunities. They're getting the experience, the playing time, because they're younger guys. That's what we need for those guys. Bukarororo still using his length and his penetration abilities to get back there as well. Let's see who else that we had to see that was on a good note, right? JD Bertrand was back out there. He made a couple plays. let's get to the bad, right? So one bad, in my opinion, was Lamar Jackson, a guy that a cornerback that's, you look at Natron Brooks on one side, and you look at a guy like Lamar Jackson on the other side, and Lamar Jackson got picked on a lot in that game. I thought he did not play well at all. Um, so just don't know. I think the biggest thing what I took about from defense is the still they still playing for positions, guys. You look at the safety positions, Jordan Fuller, Xavier Watts. You look at the nickel position, um, D. Alford, Mike Ford, all those guys still out there trying to make plays. So um, these are some of the things that when you look at game two reaction, right, you have to start to look at it and stop looking at the game, looking at results, start looking at individuals, right? Guys that's being consistent on, making a team, because this is starting to get down to decision time, and trying to make this 53-man roster is going to be really hard. It just, the way it's shaping up, it's going to be really hard. You got to love, like I said, the guys that we talked about. Young Wei Koo also had a really good night. Didn't have had to kick long field goals, but the field goals that he did kick was right down the pipe. So really looked good. Young Wei Koo making all his kicks. And there you have it, guys. Definitely want to hear your thoughts on game two reactions. Um, like I said, the positives is they was able to get something going in the running game. You continue to see the young defensive players, you know, move in the right direction. You love to see that. And then on the offense side, the guy you got our wide receivers, David Steele, Chris Blair, being able to show more of things that they ain't able to do, and you got Nathan Carter, who's really pushing for effort to try to put himself in the mix at that third cornerback. I mean third running back spot as well. All right, next topic. Kind of touched on this already. But guys who are making their case to be on the 53-man roster. So let's talk about that, right? So first of all, I mentioned that when you start talking about this 53-man roster, um, you look at who does not play, right? What I mean by that, if you haven't heard any injuries, guys being injured, because if you're injured, you can't play, right? And even if you're trying to, go for a roster spot. But guys who's not injured, they played every snap in practice, and they was inactive for a preseason game. It started to tell you who has opportunity to make this team, right? So, for an example, KC Washington did not play in the second preseason game, which tells me is that he has probably, put himself in favor to be on this 53-man roster with the Atlanta Falcons. So KC Washington is a guy. We haven't seen Jamal Agnew. It's another guy playing receiver, right? But we know he's playing in special teams. But do you plug him in receiver? That add to that receiver position, right? So now, you're looking at guys like Chris Blair and David Seals. It's really going to be hard for those guys to get in unless the Atlanta Falcons are planning on keeping 7 receivers, right? But both of those guys have made a case, Chris Blair and David Seals, right? So when you start looking at the numbers, as I say, you have to look at who did not play, right? And you got to kind of pencil those guys in, right? And what I'm starting to find out when you start looking at this roster, you try to do a 50-man breakdown, is that it's not that many open roster spots left, based off, who is going to make it, right? But the guys that, in my opinion, in preseason 2 game that had opportunity to make names for themselves are the 2 receivers I mentioned, Chris Blair, David Seals, right? Nathan Carter, definitely a guy. You look at a guy like D'Angelo Malone, right? It's going to be tough for him, that the edge rooms to make it, or the inside linebacker spot, whatever they try to put him, right? let's see. I think Natron Brooks has solidified himself, right? The nickel position still up in the air, between Billy Bowman, Mike Ford, and D. Alford still there. Same to be said about the safety position between Jordan Fuller, Xavier Watts, and DeMarco. Those three guys are still battling it out. So guys that made a name for themselves that it's going to be on a 3-man roster. It's not that many spots, guys. It's probably like 5 or 6 spots. Guys that probably hurt themselves. A guy like Jack Nelson, right, was a draftee for the Atlanta Falcons, but he probably hurt himself more than helped himself doing the second preseason game. If the first or the second one, right now, I think he's on the outside looking in, right? Um, Lamar Jackson is a depth corner piece. Bringing in a guy like C.J. Henderson, right? Clark Phillips is another guy that when you start looking at a guy like Clark Phillips, has not been healthy. Like I said, being injured does not exempt you from being cut. It just does not, especially unless you was a solidified as a starter or something like that. So if you're in a position battle with a player and you can't get out there to practice or playing the games that to put stuff on tape, you're hurting yourself. So, and they always say availability is availability, right? So, um, that's where I'm going with some of these guys. Injured like a guy like Carlos Washington, a guy like Phillips the third. Being injured does not help those guys' cases, especially when you look at the breakdown of the 53-man roster. It's going to be really, really hard, right? I mean, if you put the numbers into, start thinking about it, right? How many edge rushers can they keep, right? Now we can count them on our hand. How many we got? You got Armor Ebiketie, you got Leonard Floyd, you got James Pierce, you got Jalen Walker, you got Braylon Trice. That's 5, right? Now, Khalid Kareem, is he's going to make the roster, right? They're going to keep 6. If you keep 6, now you're going to have to find a spot in another position where you're gonna have to not keep somebody, right? So that's 5, right? If you keep Khalid Kareem, that's 6 guys on the edge that you want to try to keep on this roster, right? You go to the middle linebacker position, right? You got Devon Diablo, right? We you got him. You got our other starter, number 55. You got Troy Anderson. You got J.D. Bertrand. Does D'Angelo Malone? What about the good game that Josh Woods had in the first preseason game? Does he crack it? So, right, those what I'm talking about, right? You start to pull back the curtains and you start to look at these positions, fifth year masters. You're going to keep 25 on offense, 25 on defense, 3 on special teams, right? You kind of factor that in. That it might not be like that, right? Um, if you keep 5 linebackers instead of 4 linebackers, do you have to pull somebody from the defensive line to offensive line, right? How many cornerbacks you keep? Do you keep 6 cornerbacks or do you keep 5 cornerbacks? Do you keep 6 receivers or 5 receivers? Do you have 3 running backs or 2 running backs, right? These, when they started talking about the 53-man roster, which is so unfortunate, right? Um, now the practice squad, they get to have 16 guys on the practice squad, but if you cut somebody that another team likes, you're gonna lose those guys. So the 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 decisions that Terry Fontenot, Raheem Morris has to make coming down to cut day, it's going to be important, right? Because you don't want to cut some guys that you really like, that you're trying to develop, and they get poached. That's what happened with Zion Logue last year, if you guys can recall, a guy that we drafted, and the Buffalo Bills poached him off our practice squad because he did not make the 53-man roster. So it's going to really be important now. With Troy Anderson still being on the pup list, they might bring a linebacker in and still have Troy Anderson on the team because he's not activated yet. But when he comes back, then they're gonna drop somebody. So it's just how this whole thing is starting to plan out. But it's not that many spots on the back end of the 50-man roster, right? Um, before the right after the last preseason game, I will do my projection of the 53-man roster. I think it's probably one of the toughest things This year, because there's so many guys that I feel like should be on this team, right? Just for depth reasons alone, right? Like Nathan Carter. Um, I think he deserved probably a roster spot, but I don't think when you look at numbers, I don't think he's going to get one. I think he will be on the practice squad, definitely, right? But I don't think he's going to make the because I don't. I just think the numbers not going to allow him to do that. Um, let's see, D'Angelo Malone is another guy, right? We just talked about him, right? Raheem Morris called him one of the leaders in the special teams, right? That might be his saving grace, right? But if you bring him in, he played middle linebacker, and you decide to keep the other four, you're gonna have five, and now you're taking away from another position. So it's gonna be interesting to see um, when they do this roster breakdown, right? Well, one good thing that they can do is the extra kicker we got, Lenny Craig, because he's an international player, he does not count toward the free three-man roster. So Atlanta Falcons can actually keep him on the roster and it don't count. Um, and I think that's a good idea, right? His insurance policy, the guy got one of the biggest legs that's out there, right? And just say Kuz started to struggle. Look like Kuz locked back in, right? You look at later reports on what he been doing in practice, what he did in the last preseason game, like he's locked back in, which is a good thing for Kuz. So we love to see that, but we got to see um, who's going to make this free throw. I think guys like David Seals and Chris Blair deserve to be on this roster, right? The fact that Darnell Mooney went down and those guys got into first and second team reps and they performed like you know receivers that should be on the 53-man roster, right? But at this point in time, like I said, the number crunch, both of those guys or one of those guys are not going to make it. It's just that simple. Like I said, I think Casey Washington made his case that he's going to be on this roster, right? You got Jamal Agnew, who has not played one snap in preseason, right? And so he's the bona fide returner, right? I don't know how many snaps he's going to get on offense, but he's our returner, right? So um, that's that's his role. So Jamal Agnew has made this roster, but he falls in the receiver category, right? Cordell Hodge, last year's what's up, A1 Forever? What's up, Chris, man? Hadn't seen heard I've been watching you guys, you know, keep the reporting going out there, man. Keep doing your thing, man. Keep doing your thing. But you know, Cordell Hodge, man. Let's just Cordell Hodge. Last year Pro Bowler. He's not going anywhere. And he's probably the fourth receiver on, behind Ray, Darnell, and Drake, right? So we got Cordell Hodge. We got, like I said, Casey Washington, I think, made this case, right? So Chris Blair and David Seals, who I think have really made a case for themselves to being on the 53-man roster, probably just won't get there. Yeah. Just let me know, man, when you want to get me on, man. It's going to be an interesting season. I just want to say that um, because there's so many unknowns, right? We got a young team, but the excitement is so high. It's almost scary a little bit because I'm so excited about this team, but at the same time, it's a lot of unknowns. So definitely get me on. We can chop it up, and I'm get you guys thoughts about some of the things that I've been thinking about as well. So just let me know, man. Just let me know. But let's get back to this conundrum that the Atlanta Falcons got right. Um, it's a lot of talent on this team, but man, it's gonna be tough, right? I love what Khalid Kareem was able to do, you know, his time in practice and what he showed in preseason so far, right? But are they going to keep that many pass rushers on the edge? Right? We don't know. We just, you know, I like with D'Angelo Malone, his versatility that he's been able to play with, playing inside and outside and special teams. I think he deserved to be on this roster. So what will the Atlanta Falcons decide to do, right? Um, Now we still know we still got a couple position battles out there. That might determine a lot of things. Like I said, Clark Phillips injury, does that affect his status of making this roster? Right. The addition of C.J. Henderson coming in, um, what does that do to the cornerback depth room? Right. A guy that was a first round pick, number 9 overall. Right. Um, was put on the IR last year with the Steelers, but they all obviously seen something in the workout they had with him in July, so that's why they brought him in. So these are some of the things, guys, that we definitely got to think about. 100%. Um, and they got to be real strategic about it, right? Because, like I said, if you cut the wrong guy that you want to, keep, right? I think one smart thing they could do is just go with 2 quarterbacks, and I think they can probably bring Easton Stick back on the practice squad, so that'll help with the numbers there. Instead of keeping 3 quarterbacks, have 2 quarterbacks, and then have Easton Stick as a like I said, as a practice squad guy, right? We can do that. Let's see. Maybe can go with 8 offensive linemen instead of 9. I'm just trying to find the numbers, guys. I'm trying to find the numbers. Um, I forgot to talk about one guy that really might have solidified himself to be tight end 3, and that's um, Quentin Turner. Don't make me mess up his name. Hold on, let me get it here. Tegan Quick Tegan Q. There you go. I'm not finna mess up the young man's name. So Tegan Q, a guy that first kickoff that he was participated in, and he actually caused a fumble and they got the recovery, right? But he also has been doing really well, you know, playing tight end, right? So being behind our 2 tight ends that we have, I think that he might, take over for a guy like Felipe Franks. So um, just wanted to give him a shout out because I did not mention him. But I only think the Atlanta Falcons will only keep 3 tight ends. That's another position that you got to look at, right? This is one of the things where I think the NFL should expand, man, their rosters, right? Because there's so much talent out there, and guys that you develop, you're trying to develop, and that's what the practice squad is for. I do understand, but it's going to be really hard to, um, to let some of these guys go because they can contribute. If not, right now they can contribute later on. You look at a guy like um, Ryan Newsel, right? Guy that was undrafted. That's straight development, right? That's like the farm system for Atlanta Falcons. A guy that undrafted now is the starter center for the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, you just gotta look at he's been in the program so long, so that continuity build up, and holding the bags for the offensive lineman and things like that. He paid his dues, but he was able to stay in the program, and that's what I'm talking about. When you got guys that you like and you want to develop, but right now, just not enough spots for them, right? You look at a guy like D. Offer, right? Another guy that was undrafted, right? Not last year, but the year before last, had a really good season for us at cornerback, right? But now, he's fighting for his life again, at that nickel position. So there's just a couple of example guys. Carlos Washington is a guy that's been in this program a while, right? But you got a guy like Nathan Carter coming in, cause Washington get hurt, and that's what I mean by, another guy, Javon Gwynn, is a guy who's been in this program for a while, right? I think he thought he looked really good on second preseason game. So he's a guy that's been in this program. Development, these guys can stay in the program and develop. You still got Dwayne Leffert here, right? Like a guy like Jack Nelson, not going to make 53-man roster, but I do think they'll bring him back on the practice squad where he can get some development, right? Um, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. But it's a couple of guys that I really thought that made a name for themselves in the preseason. Week 2, it's going to be tough for them to make the roster. It's just that simple. Really, just that simple. All right, let's get to the last topic of today, and let's talk about the last preseason game. Right, so um, I think this year's last preseason game is going to be a little different than the other ones because I still think there are some um, position battles still up in there. I'm just being honest. I think the nickel and the safety position battles still haven't been 100% solidified yet. So you got to, I think they got to take that down to the wire. I really do. I'm pretty sure they got an idea, somewhat right now, but I don't think it's been solidified yet. I haven't seen one guy that be like, yeah, he's the starter, right? I mean, you can see how many reps they get, but they still been going back and forth at both of those positions. So right now, I think this last preseason game is going to be still about position battles. It's still about guys trying to, you know, make names for themselves, of course, to make the 53-man roster in the bottom half, right? I still think guys like D'Angelo Malone, um, Khalid Kareem, David Steele, Chris Blair, all those guys still have opportunities to to make names. You can look at a guy like Chris Blair. He got 2 preseason games, 2 touchdowns, right? You gotta like that. That means he's consistent. A guy that was played really well, towards the bottom half of the season last year, right? Natron Brooks, I think his play in practice and the way he's been able to do it in the preseason games kind of maybe solidify him to be that depth corner for us. But we'll just have to see how that happens. But this last preseason game, unlike others, sometimes it's just guys going out there but I don't think the Falcons. I think maybe they might have made their decision on a 53-man roster, but those position battles, I still think there could still be up in the air. So um, still this so the work is not done for these guys. Still got some stuff to put on tape, not just for the Falcons, but for the other teams around the league. And keep in mind that the Atlanta Falcons are also looking around the other teams in this league, trying to poach guys as well. So just add that to the guys that trying to make this roster on this team. Keep in mind that the pro scouts are looking at other teams as well to replace some of those guys. So it's what's going on through there. This is a doggy dog world, but that's what it's about. You want to put the best team together, right? In this case, you want to put the best 69 guys, on the Atlanta Falcons this year. That's the 53-man roster and the 16-man practice squad. That's what you're trying to create, right? We know the Atlanta Falcons is one of the teams that utilize that practice squad is a lot to elevate guys throughout the season to bring in and you know to help contribute to the team. They do it all the time, so it's gonna be interesting to see. But you know, we're getting out to the wire. It's almost time, guys. Today is the 17th of August. We kick off with the 7th of September. I think that's the date. It's about time. It's about that time. So um let's go ahead and everybody starting to putting together their 53-man roster projections. I will also do the same and see how close I am, off I am, right? Because we don't know what they're thinking, right? But from what I've seen, in my opinion, based off one who's not playing, right? I think that's telltale a lot. Because if a guy's not injured and that they feel like we've seen enough of you, right? A guy like Casey Washington, why did he not play? He didn't get hurt in practice, joint practice with the Titans. So why he didn't play? Is he good, right? Or they just want to see other guys? Like I said, if they already seen enough from you, that means you might be good, right? So that's just something to look at. Like a guy like Jamal Agnew, right? People keep forget that he's a receiver on this team, but he's the returner. He's going to make the team, right? So you have to subtract another receiver off because of bringing Jamal Agnew in. So, right? So those some of the things to look at. I can't wait. We get to play Dallas this last preseason game. I would just beat them just because it don't matter, but just beat the Cowboys. But guys, let me know what you think about what you saw in the second preseason game. Did you see something different than I seen? I think the first half was, we can just forget about the first half. Second half was a whole lot better. I think we eliminated the penalties in the second half. We did see bright spots throughout the team, from individual young players. So, and that's what you want to see. And it was a few guys that made a name for themselves. But it's time to build this 50-man roster, and I think they're really close. But definitely want to hear you guys' thoughts. A1 says, I'm a little worried about the depth of our offensive line as a whole. Yes, that is a great point. Basically, looking at what we've seen these first two preseason games, it's kind of scary. It's really scary. Um, and I don't remember them being that bad. I don't think they were that bad last year, but this is a great point. Um, Especially at the tackle position. Now Storm Norton was out. He's our swing tackle, so um, we know what we can get out of him. He started a couple of games for us, and he didn't do that bad. So Storm Norton is a guy, I think he's solidified to make this roster. I don't know his injury status where yet, but I think he was getting back. So Storm Norton is a guy that's going to come in. But yes, Jack Nelson and Elijah Wilkinson probably had some of the worst games I've ever seen in the preseason. Um, it's not good at all. So I agree with you on that. But that depth at the offensive line. So that's why I mentioned, the pro scouts looking at other teams, right? Because trust me, they see the same thing we see. They see our offensive line is a big question mark, and we need to make sure we solidify that depth position. So I'm with you 100% on that. That offensive line is scary. It's really scary. So let's just knock on wood. Hope our guys stay healthy all year. Those five, right? But that's not realistic. I mean, we just talked about Ryan Newsom started 8 games for us last year, right? Because our center went down. So just hope it's not a mass exodus for our offensive line. If it is injuries, maybe ones and twosies, and we can just do some patchwork there till those guys come back. So let's see what happens. But I agree with you. The offensive line is kind of shaky. That's a great point. Um, Still kind of shaky as well. Our defensive run game, you know, it's gonna be telltale. Bucky Irvin coming in town. That little guy, he gets on my nerves. He's quick, shifty, right? So we're gonna see if we can contain Bucky Irvin. You know, put the ball in Baker Mayfield's hand. I don't know if I really want to do that either. With the weapons he got, but we got it. We can't have them just dictate terms and be able to run and pass on this. So let's try to make it one dimensional. So let's see what happens. But um, the offensive line, defensive run game, still question marks, along with nickel, who's going to be our starting nickel, and who's going to be beside Jesse Bates. I think those are the biggest question marks. Um, just some other fun things to think about is who's going to be, the receivers that's going to take place for Darnell Mooney if he's not ready to go for week 1. We've seen a lot of guys flashes, but we'll just see who's going to be there. So those some fun things to think about going into the season, right? And some of these stuff going to get answered before the season start. Some stuff we're going to have to find out during the season, right? And that's where we're at. But guys, thank you guys for tuning in today. On my reaction preseason game 2. I'm back in town. I'm back in town for a while now, so I'm ready. Right, I've been in and out of pocket, so bringing in my videos kind of late, but I wanted to come back and give you guys my reactions. I watched the entire game. I still think if he would have threw the ball instead of trying to run it, we would have got the first down on 4th and 2, and maybe could have won that preseason game. But you know, I don't know what he was thinking. Then he got injured, and then Easton Stick had to come back in the game. So right, so you just don't know, right? So we'll see what happens. I thought last thing, I thought Cam Ward, looked like a rookie, but he did have some really good throws. His receivers got to help him out a little bit on some of those passes and things like that. But I thought our defense contained them well. So that's what our backup defense going against their number one offense, right? With Cam Ward at the helm, and he looks like a rookie, so he's still learning. But I thought our defense held it on against him. So there you have it, guys. Let me know um, what you think about this game, and like I said, get your 53-man roster projections up so we can talk about it. This is your boy Ricondo coming back at you with another video. Peace.